Welcome, where the past whispers you to sleep.
You wouldn't survive a single day in medieval times. Here's why. Have you ever felt so tired of life that you just wanted to turn off the lights, lie down, and disappear for a few hours? That restless feeling when your body is exhausted, but your mind refuses to quiet down. Tonight, I want to tell you a story that might help you let go by taking you far away, to a time when people had to learn how to survive just to fall asleep. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine that when you open them again, you're in the year 1325, in a small medieval village tucked beneath the fog of dawn. There's no electricity, no soft mattress, no hum of machines, only the whistle of wind slipping through a thatched roof. Your bed isn't made of feathers or cotton, it's a pile of damp straw. Its scent tangled with smoke, sweat. In the slow decay of time, you wake surrounded by the breathing of your family, your wife, your children, a pair of goats, and the faint crawling of insects beneath the blankets. There is no privacy, no alone, only life pressed together in a wooden room, cold and dark. Then the church bell rings, deep and distant. It is the alarm clock of an older world. You rise from the straw, feet touching wet soil that chills your skin. A breeze slips through the cracks of the wall, brushes your neck, and for a moment, you shiver not from fear, but from the truth of it all. Here, even warmth is a privilege. Outside, the world is barely awake. The ground shimmers with a thin layer of silver frost. You hear someone stirring the fire, a spoon scraping a wooden bowl, the morning's porridge of barley and smoke, the only meal of the day. It has no taste, no sweetness, only the smell of ash. And still, they eat because there's no other choice. A warm bowl, a steady breath, that's enough. In this world, water isn't for drinking, it's a gamble with death. Their breakfast is weak ale, the safest thing they can pour into their bodies. And at night, when the wind sighs through the roof and rain taps softly on the straw, people don't dream of wealth or fame. They simply pray to sleep through the cold. Tonight, I'll take you through a day like that. A day where life and death were separated by a single breath, where ordinary people found peace in the smallest things. A sip of warm water, a flicker of candlelight, the sound of someone breathing beside them. And as you listen to the sounds of another century, the crackle of fire, the whisper of rain, the soft rustle of straw, let your heart slow down. Because maybe the people of the Middle Ages, though poorer and colder than us, knew something we've forgotten: how to sleep in peace. So breathe in deeply. Let the day fade away. Tonight, you don't have to understand anything. You don't have to fix a thing. Just listen. Just let go. And let me take you back to a night in the 14th century, where the breath of humankind mingled with the rain, and sleep was sacred. Morning in the 14th century didn't begin with clocks. It began with the distant toll of church bells, drifting through a veil of damp mist. The sound wasn't sharp or hurried, it sighed, long and low, awakening a village still dreaming beneath the fog. Between the chill and the fading scent of smoke, life slowly stirred. Picture this: a wooden door creaks open, its hinges groaning softly. tired after a long night. The first light of dawn slips through the thatched roof, landing as thin streaks of gold across the damp earth floor. The little wooden house is just large enough for a family of 7 and 2 small goats. There are no walls, no windows. The air feels both heavy and peaceful, as if the world beyond those planks is still asleep. The storyteller, perhaps it's me, or perhaps it's you, in another life, moves quietly across the ground. The rustle of straw underfoot beats like the slow heart of the morning. A small child lies curled up, hands tucked deep beneath a coarse wool blanket, thick with the smell of smoke and sheep. A mother breathes evenly beside him, her face half lost in shadow, lips slightly parted, dreaming, maybe, of gentler seasons. Beside her, the father, thin shoulders, bent spine, holds a small log of wood against his chest, guarding the last warmth of night. Here, silence isn't frightening. It is life at rest. No ticking clocks, no distant engines, only the quiet rhythm of breath and the faint crackle of dying fire. If you listen closely, you might even hear the soft fall of ash, drifting down like snow. The smell of old smoke mingles with damp soil, with sweat, with burnt wood, an earthy mixture that somehow feels safe, like being held in the arms of the past. A thin beam of light slips through the thatch, touching the child's face. Dust and ash shimmer against his skin, a soft greeting from the rising sun. No one speaks. Morning here doesn't need words. To have survived the night's cold, that is enough. Outside, the wind stirs the willow branches. A rooster calls, answered by the lowing of cattle from the barn. Everything moves slowly, breathing with the rhythm of the earth. No one hurries. No one fears being late. Because here, time does not chase people, it simply drifts. Quiet and kind. The father is the first to wake. He looks around, not anxious, not weary, but with the calm routine of someone who has lived long enough to know that each morning is a gift. He stretches, bones crackling softly like an old tune played for dawn. Then, careful not to wake the children, he rises. He steps toward the corner where the fire has died, and with his calloused fingers, he sifts through the ash, searching for a spark still glowing deep beneath the gray. One ember, just one, is enough to bring back a whole day. Do you hear it? The quiet music of life, a twig snapping, a breath escaping, a spark catching, then fading again. The world here is so simple that joy is found in keeping the fire alive through the night. No one says good morning. They simply share a warm glance, a small nod. In their eyes lies something old, gentle, as if they are silently thanking each other for still being here. A child stirs, murmuring softly in sleep. The mother turns, hair loose and tangled, eyes half open in the dim light. She doesn't complain or sigh, she only watches the fire. And when she sees it flicker back to life, she smiles. Within that quiet smile lies an entire day waiting to unfold. Cold, hungry, exhausting perhaps, but for now, peaceful. The storyteller, still standing by the doorway, rests a hand on the wooden frame and looks outside. The fields are veiled in silver fog. Across the haze, a black crow drifts slowly, its cry hoarse and fleeting, swallowed by the pale light. In the distance, a wooden cart creaks, wheels rolling over mud. A farmer calls to another across the fields. The world awakens not loudly, but with sound so gentle, you could count them one by one. If you're listening to this while lying in bed, imagine yourself standing there at that doorway. Between the fading dark and the trembling dawn, you have nothing but a new day ahead of you. And maybe that's already enough. Because in a world so harsh, people still chose to wake softly. No rushing, no resentment. Just open their eyes, breathe, and begin again the quiet rhythm of surviving with grace. Inside the house, the fire begins to dance again. Light ripples across the wooden ceiling, shadows drifting like silk. A child laughs in his sleep, tiny hand brushing the air. Perhaps he dreams of sunlight, or maybe he only dreams of warmth. And you, the one listening now, can feel that warmth seeping through the words. Crossing time, crossing centuries, reaching you where you are. Take a deep breath and let the scent of smoke, of soil, of simple life fill your mind. Don't try to picture too much. Just feel it. Because sometimes history isn't meant to be understood. It's meant to be heard. Like a lullaby from another age. Like the whisper of wind slipping through a wooden door at dawn. Morning in the Middle Ages didn't begin with clocks, but with bells. You woke amid smoke and the breath of others. The room held only one candle, just enough to see the face of someone you love. Part 1. The straw bed and the first breath of day. That morning had no light switch, no sound of an alarm, only the chill seeping through the thatched roof, brushing softly against the skin, waking the man who lay in a bed of damp straw. He opened his eyes and looked up at the dark wooden ceiling, where drops of night's dew fell slowly, one by one. Each drip echoed like the ticking of an ancient clock. Steady and patient, the little room was heavy with the scent of time. Smoke, dampness, the smell of people and earth all blended into something distinct. Strong, but not unpleasant. That scent clung to everything. To the frayed wool blanket, to the woman's hair beside him, to the breath of the sleeping child curled up in dreams. It was like an invisible quilt, wrapping around the room, holding together the small lives within. He turned slightly, his hand brushing against the heavy wool blanket, its edges worn, its texture coarse like sheepskin. Ash and dust clung to the fibers. But when he stroked it gently, warmth rose from it. Not warmth from fire, but from familiarity, the kind that seeps in after years of quiet survival. That blanket had followed them through countless winters. From the day it was first woven at the village fair, to now faded, darkened, yet alive with memories of cold nights and shared breaths keeping the fire alive. There was no soft bed, no white sheets, only a layer of flattened straw, mixed with the scent of soil. And yet, people slept deeply here. Sleep, in this world, was not chosen. It came when the body had nothing left to give. When the day's work was done, when the fire was ash and the candle had burned away. There was no me time, no night to unwind, only sleep to survive. And, strangely, that simplicity made their rest complete. Without dreams, without worry, without tomorrow's weight. He looked around. The children slept close. Two little bodies curled together like lost bits of straw. His wife lay on her side, tangled hair veiling half her face. A faint light slipped through a hole in the thatch, falling on her cheek. A fragile streak of gold. Achingly beautiful. The light was too weak to warm, but just enough to make the room look alive. As if it, too, was breathing. Beside them, a goat stirred, bleated softly, then quieted again. That sound in another world might have been annoying, but here, it was rhythm, the sound of peace, the heartbeat of a slow, honest life, rough, but real. Outside, the wind blew, carrying the smell of wet earth and rotting straw. The cold crept through every crack, every coarse weave of cloth, touching skin like a ghost of the night. He pulled the blanket higher and inhaled deeply. The air was full of smoke, but to him, it was the smell of home, the scent of things familiar, of quiet existence, of endurance. He reached out and touched his youngest son's cheek. The boy's skin dry, dusted with ash, but soft as newborn light. The child stirred, mumbling something in his sleep, perhaps dreaming of bread or of a small lamb. Children here didn't dream of wonders, only of simple things, the kind they rarely had enough of. A droplet fell from the roof, striking his forehead. Cold, sharp. He chuckled softly and wiped it away, leaving a faint line across his sun-browned skin. Here, everything was cold, but the people were warm. A warmth born not from fire, but from habitual gratitude, grateful for breath, grateful for waking beside those they loved. The little room, though damp and dark, held a light no candle could mimic, the light of existence itself. Every object had a story. The cracked wooden spoon, the frayed blanket, the mud-stained shoes by the wall, the half-burnt branch in the hearth. Each was a small witness to endurance, a quiet proof that life, even here, went on. If you're hearing these words while lying down, imagine yourself on that straw bed. Feel the roughness beneath your back, the dampness around your neck, the wind sighing outside. And yet, within there's something tender, a slow breath, a calm peace tinged with longing. In this world, no one dreams of luxury. People dream of rest. They dream of nights without wind slipping through the roof, of mornings without rain dripping onto the bed. They dream of sleeping beside someone they love. Not much, just enough to be warm. He closed his eyes for a moment. The room remained the same old, poor, yet complete in its own way. Outside, the bells rang again, echoing through the village. The sound wasn't urgent. It was a gentle greeting from the new day, a day that would bring hard labor, mud, cold. But right now, within the fading warmth, beneath the golden haze of dawn, the world was still and kind, as if waiting for them to wake peacefully. And if you listen closely, you might hear your own breath blending with theirs. Slow, steady, deep. Each breath a bridge between two worlds, between you and them, between today and the centuries gone. Because sometimes, peace doesn't come from change, but from a simple morning, a moment where you're allowed to breathe slowly. There is no soft bed, no white sheet, only a layer of straw, the scent of earth. Yet here, People sleep so deeply. The bell fades into the distance. Its sound dissolves into the morning air, leaving behind a hush so pure, the kind of silence that only exists in the oldest hours of dawn. When the whole world seems to be holding its breath, the man sits up. Cold seeps from the ground, climbing slowly through his bare feet like memory. He pulls the heavy wool blanket closer, eyes opening just enough to see the room in that soft, smoky half-light. Nothing has changed since yesterday. The same gray, cracked wooden walls, the same thatched roof dripping with the last of the night's dew, the same pile of straw tangled with soot. And yet, there's something in the air that feels different, gentler, quieter, almost tender. Perhaps it's the light, the first thin thread of gold weaving through mist and dust, a fragile seam between night and day. He looks around and sees his eldest son stirring. The boy blinks, disoriented for a moment, caught somewhere between dream and waking. Then he meets his father's eyes and smiles. A small, fragile smile, but enough to warm the whole cold room. "Did you sleep well?" The father doesn't speak, he only nods. And the boy answers without words, by curling deeper under the blanket. Here, love doesn't need to be spoken. Words are a luxury. A glance, a breath, a quiet presence that's enough. The man reaches for a handful of straw and tosses it into the hearth. Smoke curls upward, sweet and faint, the scent of burning wood, the morning's first greeting from the old world. The fire stirs back to life, flickering softly, its light trembling across the walls like ripples of water in the dark. After a while, the woman wakes. She coughs gently, runs her fingers through her tangled hair, and sits up, her gaze still heavy with sleep. Firelight catches the smudge of ash across her cheek. She doesn't need a mirror to know how she looks. The same as every morning. Tired, but kind. She pours cold water from a wooden jug, washes her face, the chill biting her skin awake. Each droplet falls onto the earthen floor with a tiny sound, like a whispered reminder. The world still turns. The room brightens slowly. Smoke mingles with morning fog, blurring edges until everything seems to melt into one another. People, fire, air, breath. No one speaks. There's no need. Life here doesn't shout. It hums quietly, like the wind slipping through the thatch, brushing across faces, softening every wrinkle it touches. The smallest child whimpers in his sleep. The mother hums an old lullaby, low and steady, not sweet, not sad, just the rhythm of the earth itself. Her voice blends with the fire's crackle, the wind, the faint fall of ash. Together they form a song without beginning or end. Only the slow, steady rhythm of being alive. The man watches in silence. Everything unfolds in the same way it always has. Familiar, measured, calm. The light, the breathing, the child's soft murmur, the scent of smoke, all of it, the daily prelude to existence. And in that small, suspended moment, he feels wrapped inside a circle of peace, where there is nothing to fear, nothing to chase. Outside, the world begins to wake. The sun struggles through the fog, weak, pale, but persistent, Droplets of dew glimmer on the thatch, falling one by one. Tap, tap, tap. A quiet clock made of water. The black crow passes again, its rough caw echoing through the stillness. To those who live here, it isn't ominous. It's simply part of the morning. The man stretches his hands toward the fire. The warmth rises, faint but real, brushing against his face. He exhales long, deep, deliberate, as if trying to release the chill of the night from his lungs. His breath drifts into the air, merging with the smoke, vanishing yet in that moment. He feels truly alive. If you were there, you'd hear those breaths too. Slow, warm, rhythmic. Not the hurried kind of breathing we know today. Here, people inhale to hold on to life and exhale to give thanks for it. Inside the little house, the fire dances. Children wake one by one, yawning, rubbing their eyes. The mother smiles, her gaze carrying that quiet tenderness only hardship can preserve. She brushes her daughter's hair, then nods toward the door, where morning's gold light is waiting. A new day is beginning, a day like 100 before it, yet still sacred, because it is one more chance to breathe, to live, to be grateful. And if you're listening to this now, close your eyes. Hear the fire inside your own chest. Hear the straw, the water, the mother's voice humming through time. Let them blend into one gentle sound, fading softly. You don't need to picture it. Just breathe with them slow, deep, steady. Because sometimes peace doesn't come from grand things. It comes from a straw bed, an old blanket, and the first shared breath of morning, where even the poorest hearts learn to begin again, with a warm breath and a quiet smile. There is no soft bed, no white sheet, only a thin layer of straw, the scent of earth. Yet here, people begin each day with the warm breath of gratitude. Part 2. The sounds of a waking village. Morning mist wrapped the village in a veil as thin as smoke. Everything was damp, the thatched roofs, the fences, the narrow dirt road that led to the fields. The first light of day was not yet bright, only a pale silver glow spreading gently across the air, making everything seem to dissolve into the breath of dawn. The church bell rang again, distant, steady, and heavy, like the slow breathing of the earth itself. Its echo drifted over rooftops, slipped through wooden doors, and brushed against the dreams of those still asleep. No one complained. No one frowned, for the bell was an old friend. It didn't rush anyone, it simply reminded them the day has begun, and life is still moving forward. From the first house in the village, smoke began to rise. Thin white strands coiled upward, mingling with the mist until sky and earth became one. An old woman stepped outside, carrying a basket of dry twigs. Her hands trembled slightly, but every movement was deliberate, slow, practiced, as if performing a sacred ritual repeated all her life. The scent of smoke, ash, and barley bread baking over fire blended into the warmest fragrance of morning. Not far away, the children were tending the fire. They crouched low, blowing gentle breaths into the kindling, the flames flickering in their wide brown eyes. One of them laughed when the fire caught, shouting softly, It's burning. That sound rippled through the quiet air. No one scolded. No one hushed. For within that laughter lived the simplest joy the world had ever known. The joy of beginning another day. A man stepped out from the wooden house at the end of the lane. He pulled a worn wool cap over his head and draped a coarse cloak over his shoulders. Still damp with dew, his bare feet pressed into the cold mud, making soft, squelching sounds, a heartbeat rhythm for the waking morning. He walked toward the fields, where the faint lines of earth were beginning to show through the white mist. In the distance, a few other figures moved. Bent backs, slow steps, hands clutching tools, baskets slung over shoulders. No one spoke, yet the silence between them wasn't empty. They understood one another through breath, through glances, through the sound of the earth giving way beneath their feet. The rooster crowed, followed by a dog's bark and the lowing of cattle. The village awakened together, each sound joining the next in a harmony of humble life. There were no engines, no ticking clocks, only wind, soil, and the quiet pulse of existence. A young woman carried water from the well. The wooden bucket creaked, spilling drops that caught the weak light. She paused for a moment and looked up at the sky. A pale gray expanse, unremarkable yet full of meaning. To her, it was a painting of hope. Every day was the same, and yet each morning felt like a small miracle, a chance to live again, to love again, to work again, even in the smallest of ways. Inside the houses came the clinking of knives, the sound of clay bowls, the soft murmur of laughter. A mother divided bread, her child clutching a steaming bowl of porridge. The rising steam blurred the child's face, leaving only bright eyes and the sound of gentle blowing. A little warmth, just enough to make the morning kind. Outside, the wind swept through the fields, carrying the scent of wet soil and young grain. Dew dripped from the willow branches, each drop falling like a whisper. Farther off, voices called out, "Come on, the sun's almost up." The sound floated through the mist, mingling with the creak of wooden wheels, the shuffle of footsteps, the occasional burst of laughter. Together, they formed a rhythm of slow, perfect life. A rhythm that, if you listened long enough, could make your own heartbeat slow down too. The man reached the field and lowered his plow into the soil. The sound of metal meeting mud rang low and deep, as if the earth itself were answering him. Each furrow split open fresh ground, the scent of earth rising rich and raw. He breathed in and smiled, for it was the smell of life, of labor, of quiet gratitude. Overhead, the light shifted from silver to gold. The first rays touched the rooftops, glinting off dewdrops caught in strands of hair. And for a moment, the whole village seemed to glow from within. No one hurried. No one rushed. Everything flowed in gentle acceptance. Humans moving with the rhythm of the land, and the land responding with grace. If you're listening to these sounds now, imagine yourself standing in that small village, in the mist, among the bells, the roosters, the crackling fires. Don't try to understand. Just listen. For here, every sound has a soul. The squelch of mud, the sigh of wind, the laughter of children, the clack of wooden shoes against stone, They are all the world's way of saying, we are still alive. And perhaps the beauty of it all lies not in the scene or the people, but in the slowness of time itself, where no one competes, no one runs, because everyone knows the day will always end with firelight. That little world knows no hurry. Everything begins with light and ends with fire. The mist grew thicker as the sun hid behind the distant trees. A pale light spread across the rooftops, turning the dew on the straw into tiny silver sparks. The little village seemed to breathe a slow rhythm of earth, smoke, and people awakening together. From afar, the church bells continued to toll, mingling with the wind. Their sound wasn't a command, but a reminder that the day was coming, and that everything bird, grain, and human would begin to move again. Inside the wooden houses, kitchen smoke began to coil upward. It slipped through cracks in the doors, drifted into the mist, carrying the smell of burning straw, ash, and damp wood. The scent of life being rekindled. Children crouched around the hearth, cheeks flushed, hands chapped but nimble. They stacked twigs carefully, blew small breaths, their whispers mixing with the faint crackle of flame. A spark flared, then a soft glow spread, the fire alive again, waking the whole house. The roosters crowed, their calls stretching from one roof to another, answered by others until the entire village seemed to speak in echoes. The sound mingled with the lowing of cattle, the laughter of children, and the clack of wooden shoes on the ground, all forming a symphony of beginnings. A man wrapped himself in a heavy cloak and stepped outside. He squinted as light shimmered through the fog, then bent to slip his feet into worn wooden shoes. Each step he took left an imprint in the soft mud, a curved mark, steady and rhythmic, like a sketch drawn by time itself. He carried a small iron plow, its blade dark with dew, and walked the narrow dirt road leading toward the misty fields. Along the way, he met others. A man leading an ox, a woman balancing a basket of seed grain on her shoulder. No one spoke, they simply exchanged brief nods, but in their eyes glowed something warm. The quiet bond of people who have weathered every season together. Behind them, the smell of smoke lingered in the air, mixing with the earthy scent of damp soil. It was a smell that could not be mistaken coarse, yet comforting. A scent that carried hardship and safety in equal measure. Breathe it long enough, and you'd feel strangely at peace, as if your whole being had returned to a place it once belonged. At the edge of the village, a mother washed clothes by a wooden tub. The water was icy, numbing her hands. Yet she smiled. Every few minutes she paused, lifting her gaze toward the hazy sky, where trails of chimney smoke rose to meet the clouds. Perhaps, in that stillness, she thought of simple things. A warm meal, a dry night, or just the hope of everyone waking again tomorrow. By the porch, an old man mended shoes. His hands trembled, and the thread trembled with them. The firelight flickered on his face, casting soft ripples of orange across his weathered skin. He listened to every sound. The footsteps passing by, the distant call of an axe, the whisper of dry leaves. None of it was strange to him. They were old companions. To him, each sound was a heartbeat. Each morning, another breath of the world. Through the center of the village came the creak of wooden wheels. Slow, heavy, rhythmic, like the steady pulse of time itself. A cart full of firewood rolled by, leaving muddy trails behind its wheels. A boy sat perched on top, chewing a piece of hard bread. He sang quietly, a tune without meaning, repeating itself again and again, like a small prayer whispered to the dawn. Beyond the houses, the fields opened wide, a sea of white mist, glinting faintly with gold. The farmer pressed his plow into the soil. The metal met the mud with a low, full sound, as if the earth itself were speaking back. The scent of freshly turned soil rose rich and raw. The smell of hope, of a cycle that repeats yet never grows old. A flock of crows passed overhead, cawing hoarsely before disappearing into the fog. At last, the sun began to break through, its light catching on the dew, tiny droplets glittering like forgotten fragments of time. The village glowed in the soft gold of morning. Not bright, but alive. If you're listening, imagine standing there, barefoot on wet soil, smoke weaving through your hair, the roosters still calling in the distance, voices echoing faintly through the mist. Nothing is urgent, nothing grand, only life small, slow, and real. When people live close to the earth, everything finds its rhythm. The breath, the laughter, the water, even silence itself takes on the shape of life. This village may be poor, even forgotten, but within its repetition lies something sacred, like a lullaby sung by the earth itself each morning. A small child ran past, clutching a half-burning stick, eyes wide with worry that the flame might go out. He shouted, "Mama, it's still burning." The mother turned, smiled softly. "Keep it safe. Darling, tonight will be cold." That was how they spoke of life, not through words of wisdom, but through fire, warmth, and small acts of care. The sun climbed higher. The mist began to fade. Smoke rose straight into the sky. The sounds of the village were now full and alive. The scrape of plows, the laughter of children, the cry of birds, the sigh of wind, the clop of wooden shoes on earth. None overpowered the other. Together, they formed a harmony that only still hearts could hear. And so, that little world drifted on, slow, calm, and beautiful as a long breath. Here, no one raced against time, because they knew everything begins with light and ends with fire. Part 3. A morning without coffee. In the dim kitchen, a single candle flickered like a heartbeat. On the hearth, a pot of barley porridge simmered softly, bubbles rising and bursting in the misty air. Steam drifted upward, carrying the scent of grain and smoke, tinged faintly with the bitterness of damp wood. There was no coffee, no sweet smell of baked bread, only a pot of thick, humble porridge thinner than memory, yet enough to begin the day. The mother stood by the fire, holding a wooden spoon in both hands. Her palms were cracked and rough, but her movements gentle. Practiced had grace. Each time the spoon scraped the bottom of the pot, it made a sound steady and small, like the heartbeat of the house itself. The firelight brushed across her face, weathered, lean, But behind her tired eyes lived a quiet kind of peace. Beside her, the eldest daughter held a clay bowl close. The rising heat flushed her cheeks pink. She watched the steam spiral up, twisting into shapes that looked almost like dreams, fragile, warm, and fleeting. In that kitchen, silence wasn't empty, it was soft, like a blanket wrapped around their spirits. When the porridge thickened, the mother began to ladle it carefully. The sound of wood against clay echoed faintly, clink, clink. Simple, grounding, and oddly comforting. The first bowl went to the youngest child, the second to the father, then one by one to the rest. The last portion she kept for herself, not because she needed it, but because everyone else had enough. To her, watching them eat was already a kind of fullness. The kitchen glowed in the trembling candlelight. They sat around the small wooden table, worn smooth by years of use. There was no salt, no meat, no taste beyond the faint sweetness of grain and smoke. And yet, that was enough to make the air feel alive. They ate in silence, not from sadness, but from habit. The only sounds were the soft stirring of spoons, quiet breaths, and the sigh of wind outside the thatched roof. No one hurried. No one spoke. Each person ate as if in conversation, with the land, with time, with their own thoughts. The youngest boy dropped a spoonful of porridge onto the table. Everyone looked, then smiled. A small laugh escaped Light. Real and lingering. The mother wiped it away, smoothed his hair, and whispered, "It's all right. Maybe that bit belongs to the earth." Her voice, low and tender, sounded more like a lullaby than a correction. The father took a sip of weak ale, the drink that replaced water in those days. Cloudy, sour, not pleasant, but safer than anything drawn from the well. He drank slowly, then set the wooden cup down with a soft thunk. Here, survival didn't taste good, but it was enough to live. Outside, the mist still clung to the windows, but light was beginning to bloom through the cracks. A thin beam of sunlight spilled across the table, catching the rising steam in golden strands. The mother paused. Looking up, the light touched her hair, her wrinkles, turning them into threads of quiet gold. In that fragile moment, time seemed to stop. There was only breath, light, and gratitude. She sighed softly, not from weariness, but from the fullness that simple things bring. A new day was beginning. The air might be cold, the work heavy, but here inside this kitchen, the world was complete. The eldest girl blew gently on her spoonful of porridge, the steam clouding her face like a dream. She glanced at her mother, then smiled. The smile passed to the father, then to the children, a warmth spreading like the fire itself. No words were spoken, but they all knew. This was happiness small, still, real. A moment later, the father rose, putting on his coat to head for the fields. He rested a hand on his wife's shoulder, a quiet way of saying thank you for the morning. She nodded and began to clear the bowls, the soft clink of pottery echoing gently, like the rhythm of a calm rain. The youngest still sat there, tapping the bowl with his spoon, making a small, steady beat. He didn't know why he liked it, only that it sounded alive, The mother smiled. That's the sound of being full. Everyone chuckled softly. The kind of laughter that comes from people who have little, but never forget to be thankful. The smoke began to fade. The candle burned low. The mother blew out the flame, leaving only the scent of ash and barley in the air. It lingered there, warm, faint, like the memory of a gentle embrace. She looked toward the door, where morning light was spilling in, and whispered, "That's enough. The day has begun." Outside, the church bells echoed once more, answered by the first scrape of the plow across the field. The sound wasn't loud or proud, but it carried the rhythm of a world used to patience. A world content with a spoonful of porridge, a breath of warmth, a moment of peace. No one here thought of coffee. No one needed the rush of something sweet or strong. All they needed was a bowl of warm porridge, a bit of fire, and someone they loved beside them. And that was enough to live through another long, beautiful day. They ate in silence, not because they were sad, but because it was habit. Even a small piece of bread was enough for an entire day. Outside the wooden cottage, the mist had begun to lift, revealing fields glistening with dew. Footsteps pressed softly into the damp soil, and the wind brushed through thatched roofs, weaving a gentle rhythm for the waking world. The father was already far away, his figure fading into the fog like a blurred painting. While inside, the mother carefully wrapped the leftover crumbs in a rough linen cloth. Breakfast had been small, but life went on, built upon little things like that. She pulled a scarf over her head and stepped outside. The cold air bit at her cheeks, carrying the scent of earth and fading smoke. From distant roofs, thin ribbons of chimney smoke rose pale, quiet, dissolving into the gray sky. That was the village breathing. Each plume a heartbeat in a body made of wood and stone. Down the dirt path toward the fields, the children were running. They laughed, carrying small straw baskets filled with bits of dry bread and watered-down ale. Their lunch for the day. Simple but enough. Their bare feet splashed mud, yet none of them cared. Their laughter echoed through the damp air, rippling like bubbles that burst and vanished into mist. One of the children sniffed the air and said, "I smell bread." "Mama." The mother smiled softly. "That's smoke. Dear, not bread." But there was warmth in her smile, a quiet gratitude. For even the smell of ashes could feel like happiness. They passed the old stone well at the village's center. The water was murky and cold, mirroring the fog-streaked sky. The mother paused, scooped a handful, washed her hands, and looked down. Her reflection, blurred by ripples, seemed older than her years. Still, she smiled faintly, the smile of someone who knows that life, though harsh, still holds its beauty. Out in the fields, the father was already at work. The plow's iron blade struck the soil with a slow, steady rhythm, accompanied by the ox's heavy breathing. Mud splattered his boots, but he didn't bother to wipe it away. Each furrow he carved was another breath of the earth, and he knew it was the land's quiet way of answering back. The mother set down the basket, pulled out the smallest piece of bread, and broke it in two. Half she handed to her eldest son, half to the younger. They ate slowly, carefully, afraid to waste even a crumb. The wind passed over them, carrying the scent of damp hay and fresh soil, blending with the dry taste of bread, creating a flavor found only in simplicity and lack. Rough, real, and enough. Farther away, another woman was hanging woolen clothes on a fence. The dark thread swayed in the breeze, like memories drying in the sun. An old man sat by a doorway, mending a tear in his cloak. Everything in the village seemed worn, yet nothing was useless. Here, everything was kept, repaired, and revived. Again and again, by hands patient enough to believe in small endurance. The mother sat on the edge of the field, watching her husband. His movements were slow but steady, his breath calm, his hands sure. The youngest child wandered nearby, picking stones from the furrows and humming a tune. The song had no words, just a lazy melody. But across the misty field, it sounded like the lullaby of life itself. The father paused and lifted his head. The early light broke through the clouds, touching his face, and the sweat on his brow sparkled like salt. He wiped it away and smiled toward his wife. It was a simple look, but it said everything. We are still here. We are still all right. Above them, a flock of birds passed by, their wings slicing through the morning air. The children looked up, pointing, laughing, and in that moment, the world seemed to move as one. Wind, people, earth, and laughter blending together into a song no one wrote, but everyone knew. By noon, the sun had climbed higher. Its light poured over the fields, soft and golden, melting away the last shreds of fog. In the distance, smoke rose from kitchen fires again, a sign that midday was near. The mother called the children, handing them each a sip of the remaining ale. They drank, squinting at the sour taste, then laughed and shouted, "It's good." The mother's laughter joined theirs light, clear, the kind of laughter that made even a hard life worth loving. A morning passed like that, without coffee, without music, without noise, only earth, smoke, wind, and human breath. Everything connected, through silence, clear, the kind of laughter that made even a hard life worth loving. A morning passed like that, without coffee, without music, without noise, only earth, smoke, wind, and human breath. Everything connected, through silence, through glances, through steady rhythm. No one had to speak. No one searched for meaning. They simply lived, worked, loved, and gave thanks for being alive. If you're listening to this now, imagine yourself sitting there too on the damp ground, a small piece of bread in hand, gray sky above, and around you the wind, the bells, the slow heartbeat of life. Don't try to understand. Don't look for philosophy. Just breathe slowly and let your heart loosen like smoke dissolving into morning mist. Because perhaps happiness was never something grand. It was only the taste of simple life. A piece of dry bread, a sip of warm drink, and the gentle gaze of someone beside you. They didn't know the scent of coffee, but they were grateful for every spoon of porridge, every drop of light, every breath. for in their world, though poor, there was always warmth. Part 4. Working between earth and sky. Noon in the 14th century had no machines, no rush, no hum of cities, only wind, soil, and the breath of people who lived by their hands. Across the wide field, a thin mist still lingered. The sun hung low behind grayish clouds, its pale light dripping down like watered honey, spilling over bent backs and moving shoulders. Plowing, digging, sowing, and reaping. The man stood in the middle of the field, gripping the wooden plow. His hands were cracked, rough-marked with small lines like dried riverbeds. When the iron blade met the earth, a deep sound rose, the sound of life being opened. He inhaled, filling his chest with the scent of damp soil. It was thick, warm, the smell of sweat, smoke, and all the seasons that had come before. With every step, mud clung to his boots, heavy and slow. But he didn't stop. His rhythm matched the ox's slow breathing and the whispering wind brushing through the grass. Wind, earth, and breath blended into one ancient melody, a song that only farmers could truly understand. Sometimes he looked up, his gaze stretching toward the horizon, where clouds drifted lazily like sheets of linen in the air. Above, a few birds circled and cried, their rough voices echoing through the open sky. Here, the heavens were the roof, and the soil was the floor. Man lived between the two small, yet steadfast. Sunlight touched his tanned skin, glinting on sweat as it rolled down his back. Each droplet mixed with dust, then vanished into the earth. He didn't wipe it away, because to him, sweat belonged to the land. It wasn't a burden, but something sacred. For only through sweat could one truly exist. From afar, the mother approached, carrying a wooden jug of water on her shoulder. She walked carefully, afraid to spill even a drop. When she reached him, she set the jug down and wiped her brow. The man looked at her a short glance, but kind. She poured the cloudy water into a small clay cup and handed it to him. It smelled faintly of ash. Yet as he drank, he smiled, for it was the water of life, not of luxury. They didn't speak. There was only wind, the scent of grass, the warmth of their closeness. Then he returned to the plow, and she sat by the edge of the field, breaking dry bread for the children. They ate slowly, dust clinging to their lips, but their eyes were bright. No one complained. Here, labor was breath without it. Life could not go on. A stronger gust swept across the meadow, bending the stalks of grass. The green waves shimmered like a sea. From somewhere distant came the hum of insects, a low, endless whisper of ancient time. The man paused to listen. The sound of the plow, his breathing, the wind, all merging into something whole and human. He remembered his father's words. The earth never betrays the one who tends it, but it spares no mercy for the idle. Those words had followed him through every season, not as a warning, but as a truth quiet, enduring. He knew that work wasn't just for food. It was to feel a part of something larger, the great, turning circle of life. The sun climbed higher, its light spreading gold across his shoulders and hair. In the distance, other figures moved too, small, blurred shapes swaying in the heat haze, all of them working in sync, like the slow hands of an ancient clock, steady, never stopping. The mother refilled his cup, and this time he smiled, placing his rough palm gently over hers. No words, only a touch that said everything. They were holding the world together, inch by inch, season by season, breath by breath. The youngest boy ran over, a grasshopper clutched in his fist. "Look, Father, I caught it." The man laughed, bending down to see. He ruffled the boy's hair and watched as the child released it. The insect's wings caught the sunlight, shimmering like a shard of gold as it disappeared into the sky. For a moment, the world was unbearably beautiful. He straightened, gripping the plow once more. The earth broke open beneath him, each furrow a heartbeat, each line a story. No one would witness, no one would praise, but the land would remember. The earth kept everything, every footprint, every drop of sweat, every breath. Evening would come, and they would return to their smoke-filled cottage, eat a bowl of thin porridge in gentle silence. But now, beneath the sun, between earth and sky, labor was the holiest thing. The man inhaled deeply, shoulders heavy but heart light. He knew he had little to dream of, only to sow, to tend, to wait. But that was enough. Because they did not dream much, they sowed. For sowing was the only way to survive and to believe in tomorrow. Between earth and sky, man is small, yet in those soil-stained hands, an entire universe grows. Noon was fading. The light no longer burned bright. It thinned into a pale gold that spread softly over the damp fields. The air slowed down, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Only the wind moved, whispering through tall grass. And the quiet thud of a hoe striking the earth echoed like the heartbeat of a distant life. The man had worked since dawn. His shoulders glistened with sweat. His shirt darkened with dust and sun. Each motion now was slower, heavier, but steady. For he did not work for pride or reward, but simply because life asked it of him. The earth needed him, and he needed the earth. Between them lay a silent understanding, one deeper than any spoken vow. Far away, his wife still sat at the edge of the field, hands resting on her knees, eyes tracing his every step. Their child slept in the shade of a willow, tiny mouth murmuring in dreams. The wind drifted through the mother's hair, carrying the scents of young barley, sweat, and soil, the fragrances of a life honest and raw. The ox snorted softly, and from afar came the faint creak of a wooden cart, the rhythm of a day slowly leaning toward evening. Flocks of small birds cut through the fading sky, their wings glinting in the dim light before disappearing into the misty hills. Across the fields, every sound had grown tender. Even the sound of breathing blended with the wind, becoming part of a quiet, wordless song, a song without listeners, because everyone belonged within it. The man paused, setting the hoe upright in the soil. His rough hands trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from the strange, sacred awe of seeing the freshly turned rows before him. Each furrow was a promise. Each line carved into the earth was a whispered prayer that the next harvest would be kind. He sat down and placed his palm upon the soil. It was warm, not from sunlight, but from life itself. Beneath his touch, the earth was soft and damp. Somewhere below, seeds were sleeping, waiting for rain, waiting to be called awake. He closed his eyes and listened to the rustle of leaves, the breeze brushing his neck, and he realized the world was never silent. It simply spoke in a slower language. From the distant village, the church bell began to toll. Its sound drifted like mist, traveling far, over the fields, across rooftops, into his heart. He lifted his head toward the sky. The clouds had thinned, the light had softened. The day was exhaling its last golden breath. His wife rose, brushed the dirt from her skirt, and called softly, "It's time, my love." He nodded. No words. He simply planted the hoe back into the soil, and together they walked along the ridge, their feet sinking into the warm, pliant mud. The child awoke, rubbing his eyes, then ran toward them, laughing. His little hands reached out, and in the tilted light, his smile gleamed like the last ray of sun. The father bent down and lifted him up. The boy wrapped his arms around his father's neck, resting his head on that shoulder, the one that smelled of sweat, earth, and sun. That was the true scent of life not perfumed, not pure, but real enough to remind you that you are alive. On the path home, they walked slowly, leaving footprints pressed into the soft mud, a chain of quiet marks tying them back to the land. The wind carried the faint warmth of noon, mingling with the scent of straw and smoke from faraway homes. Every small sound, birds calling, water trickling, crows in the distance, wove itself into a hymn of evening. The mother looked around and smiled. "Everything breathes through each other," she said. The father answered softly, barely above a whisper, "Yes, the earth breathes. The wind breathes. We breathe, and so does the day." They walked past the freshly plowed field, its surface smooth, dark, and shining faintly like a brown mirror. On it, a few drops of his sweat had fallen, sinking into the soil, a simple, sacred ritual. No one would name it. No one would see. But the earth always remembered those who gave it strength. As they neared the village, the church bell tolled again. Low, distant, eternal. Thin trails of smoke rose from rooftops, and the evening stretched long and soft, like a warm blanket unfurling over the fields. No one spoke, but they all knew. A day had passed, and they had lived fully within it. The father stopped, glancing back at the fields one last time. Peace glowed faintly in his eyes, the quiet faith that even in hardship, something always returns, always grows again. The earth never truly sleeps, and neither do those who love it. A gentle breeze stirred his hair. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Only breath remained, slow and deep, and the feeling that though the world was vast, the human heart could still touch it. They walked on. Ahead, their small wooden house stood waiting, smoke curling upward like a ribbon of warmth. The child pointed and shouted, "Our home." And in that instant, all weariness vanished. What remained was a humble peace, the kind born from labor, From soil? From love. They did not speak much, they simply worked. For they knew when the earth breathes, mankind lives. Part 5. When water is no longer pure, noon stood still. The light poured down white and blinding, as if the sky had washed away all colors, leaving behind only heat and silence. The village held its breath. Men had gone home to rest. Children hid in the shade. And only the cicadas cried steady, relentless, like the heartbeat of the earth. The storyteller, or perhaps just a wanderer through the memory of his own soul, walked toward the village well. It was old, built from rough stone, its rim green with moss. A frayed rope hung loosely across the mouth. The wooden bucket tilted sideways in the sun. Below, the water was cloudy and still not reflecting the sky, only mirroring the silence of time itself. He grasped the rope and lowered the bucket. The sound of water echoed up deep, hollow, ancient. It broke the long sleep of silence, then faded, leaving only the creak of the rope and the heavy weight of what it carried. When he pulled it back up, droplets sparkled under the fierce light, falling like shards of glass from another century. He leaned over the bucket and looked down. There was no sky, no clouds, only a face blurred and trembling in the murky water. His own, but distant. The features bent, distorted, and as he reached out to touch them, the image shattered into ripples. In that small motion, something inside him sank. The quiet sadness of seeing someone you once were, but can no longer recognize. In this world, water was never clear. It always carried the scent of earth, of smoke, of time. The villagers had learned to live with it. They never asked for purity, only that the water would not kill them. They washed with it, cooked with it, fed their crops, and drank when nothing else remained. For them, the only thing truly pure was the sky, not the well. He poured the bucket into a clay jar beside the stones. The sound of water falling was heavy and low, like the earth exhaling. Each splash left a dark mark on the dry mud, a trace of memory pressed into the present moment. From afar came the soft bellow of cattle, the whisper of wind sliding past the rooftops. The whole village seemed wrapped in a pale haze. Not fog, but the glare of noonlight blurring every edge, making even the familiar appear distant. He sat by the well, hands wet, his palms smelling of soil. Droplets slid from his fingers and vanished into the dust, leaving no sign they were ever there. He remembered old stories, that once the water had been so clear one could see each strand of hair, each leaf reflected perfectly. People used to come here to sing, to pray, to check whether their souls still lived inside their reflections. Now, no one sang. They came. They drew water. They left, never looking too long, as if afraid of seeing themselves too honestly. A breeze swept by, carrying the scent of smoke from distant kitchens. He inhaled deeply smoke. Soil, water, a trinity of truth, old and raw. There was no purity left, only endurance. The water was dirty. The air was dry. The earth was tired. And yet people lived, drew, drank, and gave thanks. Because, for them, life didn't need to be beautiful. only continuous. He dipped his hand into the bucket, letting the coolness travel up his arm. It wasn't cold, it was memory. How many generations had touched this same water? How many hands had lifted, carried, begged for one clean sip? And still, no matter how murky, the water flowed like the ancient blood of the village. Never pure, never still, but eternal. In the distance, children's voices broke the heavy air. They laughed bright, clear, a sound so pure it cut through the heat like wind through silk. He looked up. They were running past barefoot, hair tangled, sticks in hand pretending to be swords. Their laughter trailed behind them, turning dust into golden mist. He smiled, softly. Even when the water is cloudy, life still finds a way to bloom. The light began to fade, shadows stretching long from the ancient tree by the well. He closed his eyes and listened. The hum of cicadas, the drip of water, and his own heartbeat, slow and calm. Together, they formed something wordless, the sound of being alive. When he opened his eyes again, the water was still murky, still heavy with earth. Yet for a brief moment, his reflection returned. Faint, imperfect, but real. A face weathered by sun, by labor, by time. But the eyes still held the light of someone who had not stopped believing in tomorrow. He lifted the bucket once more, then gently poured it back into the well, not because he didn't need it, but as if returning what he had borrowed, giving something back to time. By afternoon, the village well was quiet again. Only the rope swayed gently in the breeze, and the surface of the water rippled faintly, as though the earth itself was breathing slow, steady, enduring with mankind. The purest thing they had was the sky, for the water always carried the scent of earth and time. Noon had receded, like a river running dry. The white glare that had drenched the land turned to a gentler gold, warm and fading, as if even the sun was beginning to breathe slower. On the ground, human shadows stretched long, trembling slightly in the wind. No one spoke. No one hurried. There was only earth, water, and memory, drifting quietly through the heat that still lingered from the day. The storyteller still sat beside the well, where the rope had dried stiff and rough beneath the afternoon light. The bucket lay still, the water inside shimmering faintly, the last remnants of the sun caught in its ripples. Above, the sky shifted from white to gold, then to a soft silver gray. The water reflected it all, but held on to nothing. He leaned closer, looking into the well. His face appeared once more clearer than before. Yet somehow, it didn't quite belong to him. He looked older, quieter. His eyes no longer carried sadness, but a kind of listening, as if hearing something beyond sound. Perhaps when one stares into water, they don't see their shape, they see their soul, aging gently alongside time. The wind stirred, breaking the reflection into ripples. But in those waves, new images appeared. A woman smiling, her hands gripping a wooden bucket. A child running past, hair flying, laughter bright in the sunlight. And a man himself, but younger, stronger, his gaze still filled with hope. They flickered, then vanished, then returned again, faint and soft, like echoes of memory preserved in the well's dark water. He realized then perhaps the well didn't hold only water. It held the years of humankind, every drop of sweat that fell, every prayer whispered, every tear shed unseen. No matter how cloudy, the water remembered. And every time someone leaned over to see their reflection, the well returned a fragment of what they had forgotten. He dipped his hand into the water, stirring it gently. The coolness slid between his fingers, a feeling both real and far away. When he lifted his hand, droplets rolled down, catching the fading light, shining briefly before they fell, like time slipping through our fingers. Impossible to hold. Footsteps approached. A woman thin, dressed in a dark apron, walked toward the well, a small clay jar slung over her shoulder. When she came close, she smiled, tired but kind. He nodded silently. She set the jar down and drew water with practiced movements. Slow, steady, graceful, as if she'd done it 1,000 times before. The sound of water pouring into the jar was soft and rhythmic. It reminded him of long ago evenings, when his mother had done the same, drawing water, filling jars, then sitting quietly by the well until dusk. He remembered asking her as a boy, "Why does my reflection always tremble in the water?" His mother had smiled and said, "Because your heart is still restless. Only when you are calm will your face stay clear." Now, her words returned low, far, like a voice rising from the soil. He looked again at the water, still murky, still moving. But as his mind quieted, as his breathing slowed, the reflection became clear. A calm face. No searching. No regret, just presence. The woman finished filling her jar, bowed slightly, and walked back toward the village. Her figure grew smaller under the dimming light. He watched her go, then looked back into the well. The water had already swallowed her reflection. It was empty again, as if nothing had ever passed. The light thinned. The sun slipped behind the roofs, leaving a faint, golden edge along the horizon. The wind carried the smell of smoke, burning wood, warm ash, the beginning of evening meals. He didn't move. Every sound blended together: the drip of water, the hum of wind, the slow pulse in his chest, and beneath it all, he could hear the breath of the well. Deep, steady, quiet, the breathing of the earth itself. He leaned over once more and saw his reflection again. No longer distorted, no longer lost. Just a man living, breathing, existing in an imperfect world. He smiled, not with joy, but with acceptance. The sky deepened into violet. The well darkened too, its surface now dense and secret, as if hiding something sacred within. He stood, placing his palm against the cool rim of stone. The chill seeped into his skin. A small breeze rippled the surface, and his shadow quivered, then sank, fading slowly into the water. Nothing vanished. Everything simply returned to the earth, the water, and memory, the body, the breath, the light, all melting together, becoming part of the evening, the village, and time itself. When he turned to leave, the well remained, silent, waiting, patient, like a mirror that never breaks and never fully reveals. The sun had disappeared completely. Above, the sky turned dark, and the first star trembled alone, fragile, distant, but bright. He inhaled deeply, the scent of smoke and water mingling in the air, and in that moment, he understood. The purest thing in life isn't water, it's the moment you realize you are still alive. Water doesn't reflect the past. It keeps the breath of those who once looked within it. And when we gaze down, we do not see time. We see ourselves. Quietly drifting. Part 6. Midday rest by the fireplace. The noon heat had faded, leaving behind a gentle warmth clinging to the thatched roof. The wooden house sat like a small nest in the vast world, worn, but safe. Dim light slipped through the cracks in the walls, falling onto the packed earth floor, blending with the scent of smoke and human life. In the corner, the hearth still glowed faintly. The flames had died down, leaving only a few red embers breathing quietly among the half-burned logs. The man had returned from the fields. Dust still clung to his shoulders. His hands were cracked and dry from labor. He leaned the wooden hoe against the wall, brushed off his tunic, and stepped closer to the fire. His wife looked up, their eyes meeting in silence. She shifted slightly, making space for him beside her. The wood crackled softly, and the firelight flickered over their faces, weary but peaceful. Their child came running in, followed by a little goat. He laughed, his bare feet muddy, his voice bright. "Father, I caught a big dragonfly today," he said, breathless, proud. The man smiled and tousled his son's hair. A simple gesture, yet under that soft firelight, it felt impossibly tender. The mother took a few roasted potatoes from the pot. Steam rose, carrying the sweet, smoky scent that filled the whole room. She broke one open and handed it around to her husband, to the child, to the old mother sitting against the wall. Their hands touched, rough and warm. No one spoke. There was only the sound of breathing, slow chewing, and the crackle of fire. The grandmother's voice trembled softly. Long ago, in winter, the hearth was the only thing that kept our village alive. No one answered, but everyone listened. Even the youngest among them could feel it. That quiet sense of gratitude, like a flame spreading through their chests. Outside, wind brushed against the walls, carrying the rustle of dry leaves. The fire brightened, dancing higher, painting flickering shadows on the wooden ceiling. Shadows of father, mother, child, and time itself moving slowly. The man looked around the room, the wooden spoons hanging by the wall, a coarse tunic drying near the fire, the old cradle where his eldest had once slept. Everything was simple, yet overflowing with life. Nothing was wasted, nothing was missing. Here, happiness wasn't measured by wealth, but by how close two people could sit together. The wife placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Tomorrow it might rain," she whispered. "You should fix the roof above the goat shed." He nodded. "I'll check it tonight." The words were ordinary, but in that moment, they sounded like music. The rhythm of quiet love. The child finished eating, leaned against his mother, and yawned. The firelight painted his cheeks a soft pink. Sleep crept in light as mist, and soon his breathing joined the slow rhythm of the room. The grandmother smiled, her wrinkled face glowing gently in the fire's reflection, as if she were watching her own youth in front of her again. The room grew still. Only the wind, the fire, and their breathing remained. The flames shrank, glowing a deep red. In that dim light, every face softened, wrapped in warmth and quiet. The man reached forward and placed another small log into the fire. Sparks jumped up, tiny bursts of memory and light. He watched them rise, then said softly, "You don't need much to be happy, just to sit close and let silence speak for you." His wife looked up and smiled, her eyes shining. She didn't reply. There was no need. They were already speaking in the language of shared breath, a language only those who have worked and endured together can understand. Outside, rain began to fall. Each drop tapped gently on the thatched roof, weaving into a steady rhythm. Rain, wind, and fire merged into one quiet song. 3 heartbeats, 1 life. The world outside was cold, wet, and restless. But inside this small house, a universe of warmth was breathing. The child murmured in sleep, perhaps dreaming of green fields or a wooden horse. The grandmother pulled a wool blanket up, covering mother and son. Her eyes turned to the fire, and she whispered to it, as if to someone long gone, "Your father once sat here like this." The man smiled softly. "And now, so do I," he said. Time, for a moment, stood still. There was no yesterday, no tomorrow, only the now, where people could be small, tired, and at peace. The fire gave one last crack, then dimmed, but its warmth lingered. In the air, in their hair, in the shared silence between them. The room darkened, but stillness itself became the light. Outside, the rain thickened, a curtain drawn gently across the world. The man leaned back, the child asleep against his chest, the woman's hand resting near the fading fire. No one spoke again, because sometimes the most beautiful things are meant to stay unspoken. And in that moment, among smoke, fire, and breath, everything melted together. Time, people, and love. You don't need much to be happy, just to sit close and let silence speak for you. Night came gently, like a thin blanket settling over the small wooden house. Outside, the rain kept falling steady, soft, and patient. Each drop tapped the thatched roof with the rhythm of an old lullaby, slow and low, guiding every tired soul into rest. Inside, the fire had almost gone out. Only faint embers glowed beneath the ashes. Every so often, a piece of wood cracked softly, sending up a tiny spark that danced on the wall before vanishing. The scent of smoke mingled with the dampness of the earth, with the smell of wool and human warmth. A simple blend, yet it carried an inexplicable safety. The man leaned against the wall, his eyes half closed. The small boy lay asleep on his chest, breathing slow and even, light as wind through leaves. The wife sat near the hearth, her arms resting on her knees. eyes following the dying glow of the coals. The old mother was already asleep, her breathing faint and steady, like the ticking of a distant clock that belonged only to the house. No one spoke. Only time moved now softly, slowly, measured in breaths, in drops of rain, in the fading warmth of fire. The man closed his eyes. Every raindrop felt like a tiny memory. He thought of the morning, the mist over the fields, of noon, the blinding light on the soil, and now, the evening, when everything felt softer, truer, more forgiving. He inhaled deeply, letting the warmth of the room sink into him. Outside, the world was vast, cold, and distant, but within these wooden walls, everything was close breath, light, and life itself. The woman tilted her head and whispered, "Sleep. You have to rise early tomorrow." He smiled, eyes still closed. "You sleep first," he murmured. She nodded, her gaze gentle as smoke. In her eyes, there was something deeper than words. Understanding, born of years shared quietly side by side. She pulled the old wool blanket up over his shoulder, then leaned closer, like a bird finding its nest again. The whole room slowed, as if the walls themselves were falling asleep with them. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet grass and the distant toll of a church bell. The faint echo drifted through the rain, a reminder that time still moved. Though here, they had stepped outside of it. The fire flickered once more, then stilled completely. Only the soft red of dying embers remained, enough to trace the shapes of bodies curled together, enough to see the child dreaming, a small smile touching his lips. The room was filled with a quiet symphony of life, breath, rain, and the soft groan of warm wood. A small world breathing, slowly, evenly, gently, like the heart of the earth itself. The man opened his eyes one last time, looking around the room, the home of his life. Every crack in the wall, every smoke mark on the ceiling was a memory. And strangely, he thought it was beautiful. Not perfect, but beautiful in the way things are when they have survived. He thought, perhaps people don't need much. Just a roof, a flame, and someone sleeping safely beside them. Everything else he could leave to the rain. Outside, the downpour thickened, yet it didn't sound sad. It sounded like a song, a rhythm meant to soothe the tired world. Water streamed down the roof, collected in small puddles, and vanished. The child stirred in his dreams, mumbling softly. The mother brushed his hair aside, her motion slow and tender, almost unconscious. She bent down, kissed his forehead, then closed her eyes, her breath blending with the breathing of the others. There was no music, no prayer, only a silence so full it became a prayer itself. A fire had died, but the warmth remained. The day had ended, but life still continued. Outside, the sky was heavy with clouds, but within these walls, there was another kind of light. The quiet faith that tomorrow would come, that the sun would rise again, and they would wake, ready to live the small, simple life once more. He closed his eyes, In that fragile space between waking and dreaming, the rain became his lullaby, its rhythm slow and deep, like his own heartbeat syncing with the breath of the earth. There was no today, no tomorrow, only one peaceful night passing through, and a deep, quiet gratitude for being alive, for being loved, for being allowed to rest. There is no lullaby softer than the rain, and no light warmer than the breath of those who remain. Part 7. The still afternoon. Evening came softly. No bells, no calls, only a dim gray light spreading across the fields. The sky stretched wide like a sheet of silver fabric, smooth, calm, and cool to the touch. The ground was damp after the midday rain. Small drops still clung to the grass, shimmering faintly in the last light of the day. The storyteller walked slowly down the soft dirt path. Mud clung to his heels, each step leaving a quiet, heavy sound. There was no wind. Not a single leaf moved. Even the birds seemed to know to stay silent, as if the whole world was breathing together, slow and deep. He lifted his gaze to the sky. A lone cloud drifted by, pale, thin as smoke. The light shifted from silver to a faint rose, then faded into gray. Everything softened, blurred, as if reality itself were exhaling. He stood still. No thoughts, no plans, only the feeling of being small, yet free, like a speck of dust floating inside the breath of the afternoon. There was no wind, yet something was moving. Time itself. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it. The way it carried everything forward, leaving behind a perfect quiet in its wake. From somewhere in the grass came the sound of crickets. The delicate rhythm rang like tiny threads of metal striking memory. He sat down, pressing his hand against the ground. It was cool, damp but real. The scent of earth after rain had a tenderness to it. Half the smell of life, half the taste of longing. Far off, a few figures still worked. One man pushing a plow, another balancing buckets of water. Everything moved slowly, as if no one wanted the day to end, for they knew tomorrow would look much the same. And in that repetition, there was peace, a kind of wisdom that came not from learning, but from living long enough to understand. Above him, a solitary bird crossed the sky, its wings slicing a faint curve into the air before vanishing. In that brief moment, he felt alive in the truest way, not through grand dreams or the noise of ambition, but in this single moment, where there was nothing to prove. He thought, perhaps freedom is found only when we stop trying to hold on, when we let ourselves drift, like clouds, like wind, like a distant bell whose echoes no one counts anymore. On the ground, small puddles reflected the fading sky. A breeze so faint it could hardly be called wind skimmed the surface, rippling the reflections. His face trembled, distorted, disappeared. He smiled, understanding that everything would someday be like that. Gone, but never lost. He sat for a long time. His hands were muddy, but he didn't care. A drop of water slid from his hair into his palm, merging with the dirt, becoming a soft trace of brown. Everything was returning to itself. The water to the earth, the man to stillness. Above him, the clouds drifted away, leaving a stretch of sky clear and thin. The light softened, thinned, and finally dissolved. Like the day's last breath, he didn't feel sadness or joy, only the deep awareness of being here. And that was enough. A farmer passed by, a bundle of wet firewood across his shoulder. His shirt was dark, his pace slow, but his walk held a quiet steadiness, as if nothing in the world was worth rushing for. The storyteller watched him go and realized peace doesn't come from avoiding hardship, but from learning to live gently with it. He inhaled deeply. The air was cool and clean, the scent of something that had passed, but still left warmth behind. The crickets sang, voices fading in and out. The earth beneath him seemed to rest. He thought, perhaps when we have nothing left to lose, we finally learn to love this very moment. No comparisons, no wanting, just presence, simple and quiet as the twilight sky. A final breeze swept by, not enough to move his hair, just enough to be felt, like a hand resting gently on his shoulder, reminding him that he was still alive. And that, he thought, was the day's greatest gift. The sun disappeared. The sky now wore only a soft gray hue. Far in the village, small oil lamps flickered on, tiny lights like fallen stars upon the ground. He rose, brushed the mud from his hands, and turned toward them, toward warmth, voices, and sleep waiting at home. Before leaving, he glanced back once more at the field. The air was still. The sky, pale and endless, but something within him moved. A deep breath, slow and peaceful, like the earth itself settling into rest. Perhaps, when there is nothing left to lose, one learns to love the moment that remains. When the sun had fully gone, darkness didn't arrive all at once. It simply fell, softly, like a black shawl someone had let slip from their hands. The whole field turned still. Only a few streaks of light lingered on the tops of haystacks, before fading away like smoke. Above, the sky opened vast, deep, yet not frightening. The first star appeared, trembling, small and alive. Then another, and another. One by one, they awoke, like the slow, distant breaths of those who now slept beneath the earth. The vast sky felt suddenly close, as though if one reached out, they might touch its quiet face. The storyteller still sat by the edge of the grass, alone, in the stillness where evening had become night. The first breeze in hours arrived, soft, cool, carrying the scent of rain. The grass bent gently, and the whole world seemed to exhale at last. From far away came a faint bark, a low call of cattle, and then nothing. Only the endless chorus of crickets remained, spreading across the land like a thin blanket, laid over every weary soul. He lifted his head to the sky. The clouds were gone, revealing a heaven full of stars. They didn't blaze or boast. They simply glowed, gentle and deep. In that moment, he understood. This sky, these fields, and he himself were all small threads of the same breath of the universe. He felt suddenly light like smoke, and all the day's worries stayed behind with the sunlight. there was nothing to do, nothing to think, only this: to sit still and listen to the night. From the thatched roof nearby, water still dripped, drop after drop, slow, soft, steady, the heartbeat of a sleeping world. Each drop made the puddle tremble, then fall silent again. And he thought, perhaps people are like puddles too. After the storms, we need only to be still again. A shadow passed down the village road. The farmer from earlier, with the bundle of firewood. Now he was heading home, his figure shrinking into the faint oil light of the distance. The storyteller watched him go and smiled quietly, seeing in that repetition something deeply peaceful, deeply human. From the far roofs, smoke began to rise. Thin, soft threads of gray wove themselves into the fabric of the dark sky. A silent conversation between the earth and the heavens. He smelled wood burning, grain cooking, and the warm, closing scent of the day. A feeling of gratitude spread through his chest. Not for anything grand, but simply because he was still here, breathing, feeling alive as a small light within this wide, gentle night. He lay back on the damp grass. The ground was cool, but it held him like an embrace. He looked up. The stars were still there, distant, kind, patient. Drops of dew gathered on his hair, his lashes. Time drifted, no longer counted by minutes, but by the slow rhythm of stillness. The wind whispered again, carrying the faint pulse of life. A murmur of voices in the village. A dog barking far away. The slow beat of a pestle against rice. All these sounds wove together, forming a simple, endless lullaby of the night. He closed his eyes. The world faded softly, leaving only sound and the warmth of the earth beneath him. He could feel every part of himself sinking, loosening, as if his body too were being lulled by the breath of the world. Everything grew distant, then close, then one. There was no longer a line between man and grass, between soil and sky. He became a part of the night. And the night, gentle as a mother, drew him into her arms and whispered him to sleep. There was no more light, only darkness, but not the kind that isolates. It was the darkness of safety, where everything is allowed to rest. In the final breath before sleep, he heard the distant sound of the church bell, a single, round note, then silence. It wasn't a call, just a greeting. The night's quiet hello to the last waking soul. And he smiled, letting his mind drift away slow, deep, calm. Night is not the shadow between 2 days, but the place where the soul breathes and the heart finds its peace again. Part 8. The supper of fire and hard bread. Night had settled fully over the village. Outside, the fog was thickening. The wind whispered through the cracks in the thatched roof, soft and steady, like the earth itself breathing. Inside the small wooden house, the fireplace cast its glow over familiar faces, faces that had endured together through countless winters. The fire burned low. It didn't roar, it breathed. It seemed almost alive, listening, dancing just enough to give warmth. then bowing quietly whenever the wind passed through. The dim golden light spread across the rough table, where a few pieces of hard bread rested on an old cloth. The mother sat at the head of the table. Her calloused hands broke the bread slowly. The sound a dry, small crack echoed softly in the silence, like a heartbeat inside the room. She divided the pieces carefully. For the child, the husband, the old mother, and only then for herself. No one spoke. Only their eyes met. And that was more than enough. The child held his piece of bread in both hands, staring into the fire before taking a small bite. His teeth scraped against the hard crust, the sound mingling with the soft hiss of the fire. But his eyes brightened, because even in hunger, there was the sweetness of being alive. The father leaned forward, quietly sliding his piece toward the boy. The child shook his head and pushed it back. Their hands brushed, rough against soft, cold against warm. 2 lifetimes touching in a single instant of love unspoken. The mother smiled. It was a small smile, but it seemed to hold the whole sky. The firelight reflected in her eyes, and her tired face looked suddenly tender, radiant, real. The storyteller sat quietly, watching. The room was nearly empty. A few cracked bowls, a jug of water, a frayed blanket, a handful of wet firewood near the hearth. Yet within that emptiness, there was a fullness beyond measure, a sense of contentment, not of the stomach, but of breath, presence, and love. The fire sighed. Ashes rose like tiny stars, breaths, chewing, and the gentle pop of burning wood wove together into a small, humble symphony. No one hurried. No one needed more. A single night, a simple meal, a little flame, and that was enough. The old mother chewed slowly, eyes half closed. She didn't look at anyone, but her lips curved with a faint smile, as if speaking to her memories. Perhaps she was thinking of winters long ago, when her hands were stronger, and the table had one more bowl of warm soup. Yet in her remembering, there was no sorrow, only the quiet grace of one who has lived through enough seasons. The father lifted a wooden cup. It wasn't wine, it was weak beer, the only safe drink they had. He raised it slightly, and the firelight caught the pale liquid inside. He spoke softly, a prayer without a god. Thank you that the fire still burns tonight. Then he drank, a small sip, and the faint taste of grain lingered on his tongue, along with a fleeting smile. The mother nodded. No words needed. Between them, gratitude had become a habit. Outside, light rain began to fall again. The wind nudged the door, but no one turned to look. They all watched the flame, the only light left in the darkness. That light was not bright, not far-reaching, but enough to warm 4 souls. In its flickering glow, you could see love, not loud, not dazzling, but steady, loyal, alive. The child leaned into his mother's shoulder. The bread was gone, his stomach still empty, but his eyes shone with a fullness rare in this world. Full from warmth, from togetherness, from the simple faith that tomorrow he would still wake beside those he loved. The storyteller thought, perhaps they are hungry. but in those eyes lies a kind of fullness we rarely find. The fire kept burning. Ashes kept falling. Outside, night slipped over the rooftops, like a blanket stitching the world back together. Inside, these small, fragile humans sat close, still, warm, and quiet. No one needed to speak. Sometimes, silence is the language of happiness. The mother rested her head on her husband's shoulder, the child asleep in her lap, the old woman nodding beside the dying fire. The room itself seemed to stop breathing. Only warmth remained, only light, and a deep, quiet knowing that everything was safe, at least for tonight. They may be hungry, but in their eyes, there is a kind of fullness we so rarely find. The fire had burned low, leaving only a single red glow among the ashes. That faint light flickered one last time against the wooden wall, as if whispering a quiet goodbye before fading away. Inside the small room, everyone had settled into stillness. The child slept in his mother's arms, breathing softly, warm and safe. The father leaned against the wall, eyes half closed, his rough hands resting near the hearth, as though keeping watch over what remained of the fire. The old woman had fallen asleep long ago, her white hair trembling gently with the draft that slipped through the cracks. No one spoke. No one moved. There was only silence, a silence so full, it said everything words could not. The wood cracked. Ish then grew quiet again. Ash rose in tiny spirals through the last threads of heat, then disappeared into the air. The faint scent of smoke drifted through the room, mingling with the smell of wool, of skin, of human breath. Together they formed the scent of a peaceful night. The storyteller looked around. In the dim light, everything seemed softer, truer. The old wooden table, the muddy shoes in the corner, the frayed blanket draped across the mother's shoulders, all were covered with the gentle dust of time. Beautiful in their quiet simplicity, he inhaled deeply, feeling the warmth still lingering in the air. The fire was nearly gone, but its heat remained, soaking into the walls, the hands, the breath of those inside. Outside, the wind had stopped. The world was utterly still. Only the sound of rain dripping from the roof remained, steady, patient, like the heartbeat of a sleeping universe. Time itself seemed to pause, leaving only breathing and the warmth of being alive. The mother tilted her head, listening to her child's steady breathing. Each breath felt like a delicate thread, binding her gently to the world. She looked across the fading glow of the fire and saw her husband's face lit by its last light. His eyes were dim, but peaceful. He opened them slightly, nodding, as if to say, "Everything is all right." She smiled in return, a small, wordless smile, for they had long since learned the language of silence. The storyteller sat for a long time, watching the final ember slowly dim. It shrank to a point of orange, then turned to dull red, and finally ash. The light faded, but it was achingly beautiful, for it carried within it both the ending of the day and the rhythm of life itself. He thought, every flame must die, but what it warms remains. Like love, like tenderness, like the quiet gaze of people sitting together in the night. Outside, the first drops of dew began to fall. They touched the thatched roof, slid down to the soft earth, and vanished, like time itself, gently carrying away all weariness. The father slowly lay down, pulling the blanket over his wife and child. He whispered barely more than a breath, "Sleep." His voice was deep, tired, but warm, like the voice of the earth. The mother nodded, closing her eyes, her hand resting on her child's chest, feeling the tiny heartbeat beneath her palm. A faint breeze slipped through the door crack, stirring the last coal in the hearth. It flared once, then dimmed, softly, quietly, like a dream closing its eyes. In the complete darkness that followed, the scent of smoke lingered, warm, familiar, like memory. The sound of breathing filled the room. Old and young, mother and father, each rhythm a small prayer for tomorrow. Outside, the night was dark, but gentle. No sound now, only the world sleeping. The stars hung high, like candles pinned to the fabric of the sky, watching over these small, fragile souls. The storyteller whispered, as though to himself, "You don't have to understand life. Just be still and let time hold you." He rose quietly, placed one small log into the hearth, not to burn tonight, but so the fire would have something to return to in the morning. Then he sat down again, leaning against the wall, closing his eyes. His breath blended with the sound of rain, his heartbeat with the whisper of wind. The room, the people, and the fading fire had all become one. No today, no tomorrow, only night, and a peace so deep it felt endless, like the earth, like sleep, like love that needs no words. The fire fades, but the warmth remains. The night passes, but peace stays, and we only need to sleep. Part 9. When the church bells sing. At the edge of the village, where the hills began to rise, stood a small stone church, silent beneath a blanket of fog. Its roof was mossy, its walls cracked and old, yet from within glowed the soft, golden light of burning candles, fragile, but alive. The storyteller walked up the damp steps, hearing the wind slip through the wooden door, carrying with it the scent of incense and wet stone. The heavy door creaked open slowly, and the first sound emerged. A low, wavering voice, singing through the still air like breath made visible. There was no choir, just a few voices, uneven, trembling, yet when joined together, they sounded like tiny flames keeping the dark at bay. No one looked up. No one performed. They sang not to be heard, but to remember that they were still alive. The sound rose, echoed off the stone walls, and melted softly into the space, forming a warm circle of echoes that wrapped around every soul inside. The storyteller walked slowly down the narrow aisle, the wooden floor worn smooth by generations of feet. Above, the thin smoke of incense curled in the candlelight, weaving a faint golden mist through the air, like a dream made visible. The scent of wax, of wood, of old smoke blended together, creating a fragrance both ancient and tender. the scent of faith. At the altar stood an old priest, his voice hoarse but steady, gentle as the hum of the earth. He did not preach. He simply murmured a prayer, slow, humble, almost like a confession to himself. Grant us the grace to be thankful, to find your light even in our suffering. His voice mingled with the quiet crackle of candles, the whisper of wind at the windows, and the sound of people breathing, all together forming the music of silence. The storyteller sat in the back pew. He did not pray. He did not think. He simply listened. The voices filled the small space, slow and rounded, rippling through the air like gentle waves. Each note touched something deep in his chest, then faded, warm, soft, and achingly real. Beside him, a young woman bowed her head in prayer. In her hands was a rosary, its worn beads glimmering faintly in the candlelight, like a string of small, patient stars. Her lips moved, but her voice was too quiet to hear. Still, the peace on her face said enough. She was not asking for more. She was asking to keep what she already had. On the altar, one candle stood taller than the rest. Its flame did not flicker. It stood upright, unwavering, as though it knew its duty was to shine, even if only for one night, to give all its light before it died. The storyteller gazed at that flame, and, within its glow, saw again the faces of the villagers. The father tilling soil, the mother breaking bread, the child asleep in her arms, the firelight of their small wooden home. All those images seemed to gather within the smoke, rising, dissolving, until they became one, a single current of gentle gratitude. The voices continued, but now they no longer sounded like song. They became the heartbeat of the night, slow, steady, as though the whole world was breathing in rhythm. The storyteller closed his eyes. He no longer saw candles or faces, only the faint vibration of sound, like something ancient echoing through him. And in that moment, he felt everything release. The tension, the noise, the weight of living, leaving only pure stillness. It wasn't belief that filled him, but understanding that what these people feared was not God, but forgetting how to be grateful while still alive. When the last hymn faded, no one rushed to leave. They remained seated, letting the final echo of prayer sink into their bones. Like the last light of day folding into dusk, the storyteller rose and stepped outside. The church door opened with a sigh, and a chill breeze swept in, carrying with it the scent of incense and melted wax. The night sky spread wide, dark, deep, and filled with stars. The wind carried the echo of a bell that rolled softly over the fields, slow, low, and warm, like a lullaby from the earth itself. He stood still, looking up. The stars glimmered faintly through the mist. His breath faded into the cold air, and he realized gratitude is how humans speak to existence. It needs no witness, no reply, only a lifted gaze and a whisper that says, "I am still here. Thank you." He smiled quietly, then began to walk down the hill. The darkness did not frighten him. It felt kind. Behind him, The bell rang once more. Long, deep, and gentle. Like the breath of faith itself. They did not fear God. They feared forgetting how to be grateful while still alive. The last bell rang, then melted into the mist. Its echo did not end, it simply lingered in the air, as if the night itself wished to hold on to that human sound a little longer. The storyteller paused on the dirt path leading back to the village, where small stones glistened with dew, and the wind carried with it the fading scent of incense and song. Everything had slowed to a still rhythm. No footsteps, no voices, only the night and the quiet breathing of the world. Long, steady, merciful. Behind him, the church was gone in the fog, leaving only a faint golden glow behind the window. He turned to look once more and smiled softly, as if stepping out of a dream he wished could last a little longer. The village path curved between rows of trees, moonlight spilling pale and liquid over the damp ground. With every step, he heard the crunch of pebbles beneath his boots, the fall of leaves, and, from time to time, the whisper of wind brushing through the willows. Small sounds, yet enough to fill the night completely. He passed houses long dark. Inside each, people were sleeping. Gentle, untroubled sleep. From one window, left slightly open, a faint orange glow from the fireplace remained. The fire was small, red, loyal. It flickered across a mother's face as she held her child close. A scene so still, so beautiful, that one might hold their breath for fear of breaking it. From far away, the church bell tolled again, deeper this time, its sound reaching down into the soil. It didn't wake anyone, but rocked the world further into sleep. The storyteller stopped, lifting his gaze toward the sky. Above him, stars shone faintly through the haze. Not bright, not boasting, simply there, like the spirits of those long gone, still watching, still keeping this fragile world from falling into darkness. He closed his eyes. The wind brushed his cheek, as if an unseen hand was reaching out to say, "Everything is all right. Everything is as it should be." The echo of the old hymn still lingered in his mind. A silent psalm without words. It blended with the sound of the bell, with the whisper of rain, with the slow beat of his own heart, all together forming a song of peace. As he walked, he passed the village well. The surface of the water gleamed dark like glass, mirroring the silver of the moon. He bent down and saw his reflection blurred, softened by the ripples. A face no longer young, but calm, and in those eyes reflected back at him, he realized something simple and profound. A person is like this water only when still. Can they reflect the sky? A breeze swept across the surface, and the reflection vanished. He smiled not with loss, but with understanding. Sometimes disappearance is another form of remaining. From somewhere in the distance came the bleat of a sheep, the creak of a door, and the faint smell of baked bread left from supper. All of it simple, ordinary, and yet, in that simplicity, his heart ached with quiet contentment. He sat beneath the old oak at the edge of the village. Its roots spread wide like the hands of time. Its bark split and rough, still holding life. He looked up through its branches. where the sky lay stretched like a vast blanket across the world. It was no longer cold, only silent. A silence not of emptiness, but of being held. The storyteller breathed in deeply and whispered to the dark, "Thank you for being gentle tonight." No voice answered, and yet, in the wind, he thought he heard something reply, faint, tender, like the whisper of the earth itself. "Sleep now. Tomorrow will come." He closed his eyes, resting his head against the tree. The bells had fallen silent. Only the breath of night remained slow and steady. The wind sighed through the branches, moonlight dripping softly onto his shoulder. The whole world seemed to settle, drifting into a single, endless sleep. And in that final moment, before all sound dissolved, he understood. The night was never an ending. It was a place where people were allowed to stop pretending to be strong, a place to return to oneself. Small, fragile, but true. Every sound disappeared. Only the heartbeat remained, then faded too, into the stillness. The storyteller exhaled a long, quiet breath and let his body melt into the earth. Above him, the stars still burned. Below, the last hearth in the village had gone out, but peace remained, spreading like mist, seeping into every house, into every dream. In the sleep of these medieval souls, there were no kings, no battles, no glories, only the slow heartbeat of existence. And as the night closed its eyes, every soul was finally at rest. No more prayers, no more searching. For this silence was the most beautiful prayer of all. The night ends nothing. It only teaches us to pause and be grateful, to thank the world for breath, for the sound of the bells, and for the gift of sleeping safely beneath the sky. Part 10. Sleep within the night. It was late. The whole village had sunk into a darkness soft as velvet. Only the raindrops remained tapping gently on the thatched roofs, and the wind weaving through the cracks in the walls, whispering as if speaking with the night itself. Inside the small wooden house, the storyteller lit an oil lamp. A small flame bloomed, quivering in his palm, its faint golden light spreading just enough to reveal the faces of those already asleep. The child lay nestled in his mother's arms, his damp hair clinging to his forehead, yet his face was utterly peaceful, as if nothing in the world could ever harm him again. The mother still held her child tightly, her chest rising and falling in slow rhythm, each breath a silent prayer of gratitude for life. The father had fallen asleep beside the hearth, his body heavy with the day's labor, yet his rough hands still rested near the embers, as if keeping guard over the warmth of his family. The fire had died down, leaving only a slender line of red. The night's heartbeat, slow and glowing. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm, each drop landing softly on the roof, sliding through the straw, and falling to the earth below. Its sound was neither lonely nor sad, but like a lullaby, singing to the soil, the sky, and the sleeping souls within. The storyteller sat by the window and opened it just enough for the breeze to enter. A cool wave of air flowed in, carrying the scent of wet earth, and faint smoke. He looked outside, no moon, only the dark swaying of trees. At that hour, the world no longer had an inside or outside. It was all one great quietness. He whispered, "Sleep now, gentle souls. Tonight, the rain will tell the story for me." And truly, outside, the rain was telling stories. Stories with no beginning and no end. Just a slow, endless murmur flowing across the roof, through the branches, and around the walls of time. The storyteller closed his eyes, listening to the rustle of wind, to the heartbeat of the house, and to the soft breaths of those sleeping within. The world felt simple now. There was rain. There was warmth. There was the fading fire, and a feeling of absolute safety. No one dreamed of kings or mornings. No one thought of tomorrow. There was only sleep deep, complete, as if the universe itself were resting. The lamp's light flickered on the wall, swaying gently, as though the room were breathing. Each flicker was a heartbeat, and every shadow a memory dissolving into peace. He stared into the flame and saw his reflection there, blurred, lost within the light. It was not the face of a man awake, but of someone becoming a dream. Outside, the rain thickened, and the wind carried soft murmurs through the walls. It sounded like footsteps, approaching, stopping, fading. A journey without destination, only existing to keep the night from feeling alone. He placed a hand on the table and whispered almost a sigh, "The long day is done. Now, let peace do its work." He turned the lamp lower. The light folded in, round and warm, like the gentle eye of night closing itself. In the darkness, the sound of breathing filled the room. The mother, the father, the child, and the old woman dreaming of long-gone springs. Their breaths joined together, becoming the soft music of existence. No melody, no words, only the sound of being alive, the truest sound of all. Outside, the rain touched the ground and whispered, "I am still here." And within the storyteller's heart, a feeling both tender and eternal began to dissolve into the warmth of the room. He leaned his head forward, the oil lamp burning faintly beside him, its light just enough to hold the soul of the world in place. The night curled around them in silence. The rain kept falling, and in that fragile space between waking and sleep, the storyteller realized everything else can wait. Only this moment matters. The heartbeat, the warmth, the quiet blessing of stillness. He whispered one last time, his voice small, softer than a leaf. "Sleep now." Outside, the rain is telling stories. Inside, the hearts of the old ones rest in the warmth of the dying fire. The final light went out. The room sank into darkness, and the world fell into complete silence, so still you could hear peace itself. Outside, the rain tells its story. Inside, the hearts of the old ones rest in the warmth of the dying fire. The rain had stopped. Only the last drops still fell from the thatched roof to the soft earth below. Each one clear, heavy, like the sigh of a night finally ending. Above, the first light of dawn began to slip through the clouds, thin as a golden thread stitching together the seam between dream and waking. The storyteller opened his eyes. He didn't know how long he had slept, only that the world had changed. The room was the same, the wooden walls, the ashes in the hearth, the straw bed, and yet everything seemed lighter, gentler. The rain was gone. In its place, the earth breathed warmth, and from somewhere outside, a small bird called softly, as if afraid to break the fragile peace of morning. He sat up slowly. The oil lamp had gone out, leaving behind a thin wisp of smoke that curled lazily toward the ceiling. Beside him, his wife still cradled their child, her breathing slow, her face calm, like a piece of moonlight left behind by the night. He watched them for a long moment, then smiled, a smile filled with gratitude. Fragile as dew on his lashes, he stood and opened the door. The heavy wooden hinges creaked, and light poured in. Not harsh, not hurried, but soft and golden, touching his face, his calloused hands, and filling the room with quiet warmth. Outside, the village seemed to wake within the scent of wet earth and young grass. Mud still clung to the road, but it was already drying under the pale sun. Drops of water clung to rooftops, each one reflecting light like tiny crystals. Every house, every window, every tree glowed with a simple kind of beauty, as though the rain had washed away all the weariness of the world. The storyteller stepped onto the porch, his bare feet sinking into the soft ground. It was cold, but a clean kind of cold, the kind that felt like a welcome. In the distance, a rooster crowed, a dog barked, and the wheels of a wooden cart rolled slowly over the road. All the sounds joined together, the morning's first music. Slow, tender, the rhythm of life itself. He looked out toward the fields. Mist still hung like a thin veil, blurring the shapes of people beginning their day. They bent low, planting, digging, stirring fires, as if the long, cold night had never been. They lived, and lived through the quiet repetition of simple peace. He drew in a deep breath. The air of morning filled his lungs damp, smoky, touched with sunlight. A warmth rose inside him, as though an invisible hand had gently touched his heart, whispering, "It's morning. You are still here." He looked up. The last clouds of night were fading, making way for a soft, golden glow. The sun hadn't yet risen fully, but its light had already embraced the entire village. Each drop of dew, each blade of grass, each bead of water on the roof became a mirror, reflecting life itself. Inside the house, the child stirred. A faint cry, then silence. The mother awoke, opened her eyes, and her lips moved in what seemed like a prayer. She didn't say good luck or be safe. She simply looked toward the light, her gaze calm as the earth. The storyteller turned back inside. The ashes had gone cold. He knelt down, picked up a dry twig, and gently brushed away the layer of gray. Beneath it, a single ember still glowed faintly. Tiny, but enough to begin another day. He blew softly. The ember came alive again, crackling as a new flame caught. And that small light grew, warmer even than the morning sun. Outside, voices called to one another. The sound of a wooden pestle, the laughter of children running down the road. all of it merging into a melody of continuity. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything was alive again. He stood by the fire, then looked out the door. The sky was clear now. Birds glided across the thatched roofs, drawing arcs of peace through the air. He whispered, his voice barely louder than the wind. So another day begins. And perhaps the very act of waking is the greatest miracle of all. The night was gone. Yet in the faint warmth left by the fire, and in the whispering wind outside, something of the night remained. Soft, kind, like the echo of a lullaby. And perhaps, if you're listening to these words now beneath your blanket, remember this. Every night will fade, but its peace will follow you into the morning. Take a deep breath. Feel the scent of earth, of wood, of dawn drifting through the window. Then close your eyes once more, for sometimes, even light is a kind of dream. Dawn does not wake anyone. It only opens the door gently, so that sleeping souls can breathe once more. In the soft light of life, more than 700 years have passed since the 14th century. The wooden villages have turned into cities. The old church bells have gone quiet beneath the noise of the modern world. Human life is brighter, faster, fuller of voices. And yet, it has become harder than ever to truly fall asleep. Today we lie on soft beds, with clean sheets, warm blankets, and silent rooms. But deep inside, something is missing. Peace. The kind of peace that medieval souls once had, when all they needed was a warm breath, a bowl of barley porridge, and the sound of rain outside to remind them that they were still alive. Perhaps, in this bright and restless world, we have forgotten how to rest in the dark. We fear silence. We fear stillness. We fear doing nothing. But the night never asks us to do anything. It only asks us to rest. 700 years have passed. We have traveled farther, learned more, but sleep still needs the same things. A sense of safety, a slow breath, and a gentle story to let the mind dissolve into the universe. And maybe tonight, you don't need to fix anything. You don't need to plan tomorrow or carry the weight of unfinished things. Just take a deep breath and let the world keep turning, the way it always has, quietly, effortlessly. Everything outside continues without you. The rain still falls. The wind still moves through the trees. The rivers keep flowing. And the earth still spins, with or without your worry. You don't have to hold it all together. Life knows how to take care of itself. Now, close your eyes. Let your thoughts drift away like clouds. Let your worries soften. Let your heartbeat slow. You don't need to understand the story. You don't need to remember it. Just feel it. Feel that you are safe. You are here, wrapped in the soft darkness, surrounded by the small sounds of life. The wind beyond your window. The rhythm of your own breath. The warmth that feels like an invisible embrace. The universe is holding you gently. It isn't pushing you to stay awake, nor urging you to dream. It's simply cradling you, the way the night has always held every quiet soul. If you can still hear my voice, let yourself fade slowly with your breath. Everything is far away now. The world is distant and kind. Only you remain. drifting in a calm space, as still as a sleeping lake. Beneath that stillness, life continues, soft, quiet, without reason, like a lullaby that never ends. 700 years have passed. Humanity has changed. Languages have shifted, but the need to feel safe before sleep remains the same. Time may take everything from us, but it cannot take away the right to rest. And if tonight you feel even a little more at peace, know that this is what sleep has been trying to give you all along. Take another breath. Gentle, slow. Let your heart drift. Let your mind dissolve into the last trace of light behind your eyelids. You don't have to do anything. Just listen and let the night carry you away. If you feel a little calmer now, if this story helped you breathe a little easier, then leave a small greeting in the comments, so I'll know that you're still here, still listening, still searching for your own sleep. This is History Fall Asleep, where history is told like a dream, a place where you don't need to understand life or chase time, only to allow yourself to rest. Each night, I'll tell you another story of old lives, of earth and sky, of the quiet tenderness the world still holds. So now, just let go. Let the small light inside you drift with the night. Outside, the wind is singing. Inside, you are safe and sleeping. May your night be soft and your dreams kind. 700 years have passed. Humanity has changed, but sleep still needs the same peace. Perhaps tonight, you don't need to fix anything. Just breathe. Let the world turn. Now close your eyes. Let your thoughts drift away. You are safe, and the universe is holding you gently. 700 years have passed, and though the world has changed, sleep still asks for the same thing: peace. You don't need to fix anything tonight. You don't need to think or try. Just breathe and let the world turn without you. Outside, the rain is whispering. Inside, the air is warm. You are